Most girls at Croft Industries are fighting for a promotion. I'm just fighting for my lunch. For 2 weeks, a phantom thief's been stealing my food. They think I'm an easy target, a fragile human they can push around. They're wrong. Today, I'm packing enough fire to make a grown man scream. 6 jalapeños, all the seeds, 1 sharp knife. The war starts in my kitchen, but it's going to end in the break room. I just don't know yet that I'm setting a trap for a beast. My eyes burned with a fiery sting, but I didn't stop chopping. I stood at my cramped kitchen counter, glaring down at the cutting board. 6 fresh jalapeño peppers sat in pieces under my knife. I left the seeds inside. I left the thick white ribs intact. I wanted maximum heat. I wanted tears. Someone at the office had a serious death wish. For 2 straight weeks, a phantom thief had been stealing my lunch from the communal breakroom fridge. 10 times. Every single workday, my homemade meals vanished into thin air. I was a junior marketing assistant at Croft Industries. I barely made enough money to cover my rent and my grocery bill. Losing my food meant I'd spend the rest of my shift hungry, angry, and lightheaded. I couldn't afford to buy lunch downtown. A simple salad near the office carried a punishing price tag, eating up my train fare for the week. I scraped the chopped peppers into a neon pink plastic tub. I dumped a layer of shredded chicken, black beans, and rice right over the peppers. Then, I covered the trap with a thick blanket of melted cheddar cheese. It looked like a normal, delicious chicken fajita bowl. It was a bowl of pure, concentrated fire. I snapped the lid onto the plastic tub and shoved it into my tote bag. I walked into the towering glass and steel building of Croft Industries at 8 in the morning. I headed straight for the break room, opened the large refrigerator, and placed my pink tub right in the center of the middle shelf. It was the perfect bait.
You look like a woman on a mission.
I jumped and spun around. My coworker Bribe leaned against the doorframe holding a plain white coffee mug. I'm going to catch him today. The thief goes down at noon.
What did you do? Laxatives?
No. Raw jalapeños. I've left all the seeds inside. Whoever steals that container will need a gallon of milk to stop the burning. We just have to watch the water cooler. The first person who runs in here crying is our culprit.
I like your style, Tessa. My money's still on Todd. The man's got no shame.
If it's Todd, I'm going to make him pay me back for 2 weeks of groceries. I walked back to my desk and slumped into my chair. The morning dragged by at a snail's pace. By the time the clock hit 12:15, my stomach let out a loud rumble. The trap was set. I stood up and stretched my legs. I'm going to do a walk-by.
Report back.
I walked down the carpeted hallway. My heart pumped fast in my chest. I reached the break room door. It was shut tight. I pressed my ear against the wood. I heard the faint clinking of a fork against plastic. Gotcha. I grabbed the handle. I took a deep breath. I pushed the door open. The words died in my throat. I froze in my tracks. A cold shiver ran down my spine, replacing all my fiery anger with pure shock. The lunch thief wasn't Todd. Chapter 2. Lincoln Croft leaned against the break room counter. He was the billionaire CEO of Croft Industries, the man who owned the building, the man who signed my paychecks. Up close, he was tall and broad-shouldered. He wore a sharp, dark gray suit. He held a flimsy white plastic fork in his right hand. In his left hand, he held my neon pink tub. My brain stopped working. My feet felt glued to the linoleum floor. I just stood there staring at him. He looked up from the food and locked eyes with me. His gaze was sharp, intense, and a strange shade of amber that made my stomach flip upside down. He didn't look guilty. He didn't drop the tub.
She's brave. She trapped us. She's not running away.
Lincoln forced the beast to stay quiet. He dug the plastic fork into the bowl. He scooped up a huge bite of chicken, cheese, and raw jalapeño seeds. Wait! He put the fork in his mouth. I braced myself. I waited for his face to turn red. I waited for him to cough, gasp for air, or reach for the sink. Those peppers were lethal. Lincoln chewed. His jaw moved in a steady, slow rhythm. He swallowed the bite. He didn't reach for a glass of water. He didn't break a single bead of sweat. Instead, one corner of his mouth tipped up into a slow, arrogant smirk. He set the tub down on the counter. How does it taste? Lincoln took a step toward me. The break room suddenly felt too small. He moved with a smooth, silent grace. He stopped just a few feet away from me. I had to tilt my head up to look at his face.
Claim her. Take her right now.
Lincoln clenched his fists to keep from reaching out. He looked down at me, his amber eyes glowing under the harsh fluorescent lights.
I'm hotter.
His voice was a deep, rough rumble. It sent a weird shiver down my arms. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Lincoln held my gaze for a long, heavy moment. The air between us felt thick and charged. Then he stepped around me and walked out the door. I spun around and watched his broad back disappear. I stood alone in the break room for a full minute, trying to catch my breath. I walked over to the counter and looked down into the tub. It was empty. He'd eaten the whole thing. I grabbed the plastic container and dumped it straight into the trash can. Chapter 3. I woke up expecting a pink slip. I skipped breakfast because my stomach was tied in tight knots. I walked into the office at 8 sharp. Before I could even turn on my computer, my desk phone rang. Hello, this is Tessa.
Tessa, come to my office right now, please.
I walked down the aisle of cubicles. I knocked on Mr. Davis's door and pushed it open. He sat behind his desk, holding a single sheet of paper.
Sit down, Tessa.
Mr. Davis, if this is about yesterday in the break room, I can explain. It was just a stupid prank regarding my lunch.
What prank? Anyway, never mind. Why am I here? You're being transferred, effective immediately, upstairs.
I stared at the paper. It was a transfer order. Upstairs, to floor 16?
No, to the top floor, the executive suite. You've been promoted to Executive Liaison. Your new salary is on that paper. Pack your desk, Tessa. They want you up there in 10 minutes.
I looked down at the paper. The salary was a luxurious, life-changing amount of money. I don't understand. I didn't apply for a promotion.
I don't understand either. But orders from the top floor don't get questioned. Go pack.
I walked back to my desk in a complete daze. Bree helped me load my stuff into a small cardboard box.
Executive Liaison? Tessa, you work for Lincoln Croft now. What did you do to get this?
I don't know. I carried my box to the private elevator bank. I pressed the button for the top floor. The doors dinged. The top floor was covered in plush, dark gray carpet. It was dead quiet. A large glass desk sat right in the middle of the open reception area. Behind it was a heavy, solid oak door. The oak door swung open. Lincoln walked out. He stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes locked onto me. He didn't say a word. He just stood there. Then his chest expanded. He took a deep breath through his nose. His nostrils flared.
Mate, she's here. She smells like ours.
The scent hit Lincoln like a freight train. Wild strawberry and toasted sugar. It bypassed his human logic and went straight to his primal instincts. His jaw tightened and his eyes darkened.
Wild strawberry.
Excuse me? Lincoln shook his head, blinking fast. He forced the feral beast back into the dark corners of his mind. He stood up straighter and cleared his throat.
Welcome to the top floor, Tessa.
He turned around and walked right back into his office, shutting the oak door behind him with a firm click. I stood by my new desk, bewildered. This wasn't a promotion. This was a trap. Chapter 4. I sat at my new desk for 2 full hours. The top floor remained a ghost town. No one walked past. My phone didn't ring. I hadn't got a computer, no files to sort, and no instructions. I just sat there, staring at the closed door. Anger started to bubble in my chest, hot and fast. Lincoln was playing games with me. He'd stolen my lunch for weeks. I caught him. Instead of firing me, he dragged me up to his private floor, threw money at me, and left me to sit in silence. He thought he could turn me into his little pet employee just to amuse himself. I squeezed my hands into fists. I wasn't a pawn. I needed this job to survive, but I wanted to do actual work, not sit around as a trophy assistant for a lunch thief. I stood up. I marched right up to the door. I didn't knock. I turned the handle and pushed it wide open. Lincoln's office was huge. The back wall was made of glass overlooking the city. A sleek black desk sat in the center. Lincoln sat behind it, reading a file. He looked up when I barged in.
Can I help you, Tessa?
His tone was calm and smooth. I walked right up to the edge of his black desk. What's this?
This is my office.
he replied, setting his pen down. No. What's this job? Why am I here? I've been sitting out there for 2 hours with nothing to do. I don't even have a computer. What exactly is an executive liaison?
Your job is to assist me. You'll manage my private schedule, organize my meals, and handle my direct correspondence.
Organize your meals? Is that a joke? You brought me up here to be your private chef because you liked my spicy chicken?
You make a good bull.
I'm a marketing assistant. I went to college to analyze market trends. I'm not a caterer. Stop playing games with me. Lincoln dropped his arms and leaned forward, resting his hands flat on the desk.
I don't play games. I put you here because I want you here.
The low, rumbling growl was back in his voice. I crossed my arms, refusing to back down. I don't believe you. You stole my food.
I own the building. I own the fridge.
That doesn't make the food yours. Lincoln stood up. He walked around the edge of his desk and stopped right in front of me. He felt like a walking furnace. I had to force myself to stay planted.
Fight back. She's strong. She's a true Luna.
Are you quitting?
No, I need the paycheck. But I'm not going to just sit at that desk and wait for you to get hungry. I want a computer. I want real work. Lincoln stared at my face. The tension between us felt thick enough to cut.
Fine. You want work? Go to the break room downstairs. Make me a coffee. Black. No sugar.
Fetch your own coffee.
That's not very liaison-like of you, Tessa.
Watch me. I spun on my heel and marched right out of his office. I pulled the door shut behind me with a loud thud. I sat back down at my desk, my heart pounding fast. I wasn't going to get him coffee. I'd make him work for every single thing he wanted. The war was officially on. Chapter 5. At noon the next day, the elevator doors chimed and slid open. A delivery driver stepped onto the top floor. He wore a crisp white uniform and held a large black thermal bag with a shiny gold crest stamped on the front. I recognized that crest. It belonged to Le Petit, a restaurant downtown with a 6-month waiting list. The driver walked up to my glass desk and set the bag down.
Delivery for Mr. Croft.
Thank you. He tipped his hat and left. I unzipped the thermal bag. The smell of roasted garlic, rich butter, and seared meat drifted out. I pulled out 2 black cartons and walked into Lincoln's office. He was typing fast on his laptop, his charcoal suit jacket draped over the back of his chair. Your lunch is here. I'll head down to the break room for mine. Lincoln stopped typing.
Sit down, Tessa.
Why?
Because one of those cartons is yours. Sit.
He pointed to the leather guest chair opposite his desk. I've brought my own lunch.
You eat cheap cafeteria food and whatever you pull out of your freezer. This is real food. Eat it.
Inside sat a thick, perfectly seared Wagyu steak, truffle mashed potatoes, and grilled asparagus. I felt my spine stiffen. He thought he'd buy my forgiveness with fancy meat. He thought he'd order me to eat, just like he'd order me to type emails. No, thank you. I turned around, walked out to my desk, and grabbed my blue plastic container. I marched back into his office and sat in the leather chair. I popped the lid off. The sharp, tangy scent of leftover spicy chicken and rice filled the air, cutting right through the smell of his truffles. Lincoln stopped cutting his steak and stared at my blue tub.
Give us her food. Reject the dead meat. Take hers.
Lincoln tightened his grip on his aluminum fork. He forced his human side to stay in control. He took a bite of the expensive steak. It tasted like cardboard. He chewed, swallowed, and glared at me.
You're stubborn.
I prefer my own cooking. It's got flavor, and I know exactly what went into it. Nobody touched it but me.
You refuse a luxury meal just to prove a point?
I refuse it because I don't want it. You can't just throw money at me and expect me to wag my tail, Mr. Croft. Lincoln froze. A strange sound rumbled in his chest, a rough, suppressed growl. His eyes flashed gold under the office lights before settling back to amber.
She fights. A Luna. Our Luna.
Lincoln pushed his carton of untouched steak away. He leaned forward, resting his chin on his knuckles. He watched me eat my entire lunch. He didn't say another word, but the heat rolling off his body made the room feel like a sauna. I finished my rice, snapped the lid shut, and walked out. I'd won this round, but the burning look in his eyes told me the war wasn't over. Friday evening hit, and I practically sprinted to the subway. The train ride home took 40 minutes. I unlocked the door to my cramped third-floor apartment and dropped my tote bag. A loud, raspy meow came from the kitchen. I know. I smiled and walked over. Nacho sat next to his empty food bowl. He was a 10-pound orange rescue cat with one eye, half a tail, and a terrible attitude. He bumped his head against my shin, demanding dinner. I scooped a tin of wet food into his bowl, and he dug in like he hadn't eaten in a week. I fell onto my worn-out fabric couch, and my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lincoln.
Sant, I need the Miller file sorted tonight. I'm outside.
I sat up straight. Outside? I peeked through the blinds and saw a sleek black town car parked on my trash-lined street. It looked like an alien spaceship next to the rusty sedans. A knock hit my door. I opened it to find Lincoln in a fitted black sweater and dark jeans. He looked too big and too rich for my cheap building. You could have emailed these.
They require physical signatures.
He stepped inside without an invitation and closed the door. The apartment shrank. His broad shoulders seemed to take up all the air. He looked around at the peeling paint and the thrift store table. He didn't sneer, but his jaw ticked. A low hiss broke the silence. Nacho stood in the center of the rug, back arched. This is Nacho. He hates strangers. Lincoln let out a quiet scoff. He stepped forward, expecting the cat to scatter. Nacho didn't move an inch. Instead, he lifted a paw and swatted Lincoln right on the toe of his expensive leather shoe. Then, Nacho jumped onto the couch and glared. Lincoln stared at the cat, completely baffled. His alpha presence meant nothing here.
He's claimed the couch.
He claims everything. I'll have these signed and on your desk by Monday. Lincoln looked from me to the cat, then back to me. A genuine, soft smile broke across his face. It hit me like a punch to the gut. He was gorgeous when he smiled.
Monday.
He agreed, turning toward the door. Saturday morning at noon, a loud knock echoed. I found a delivery man holding a giant box. Inside sat a circular cat bed lined with crushed velvet, featuring a heating pad. A crisp white card rested on top.
Card for the king of the couch. L.
I stared at the ridiculous gift. He'd tried to bribe me with steak, and it failed. Now he was trying to bribe my cat. I looked at Nacho. The orange menace jumped into the velvet bed, curled into a ball, and started purring louder than a car engine. The Billionaire won round 2. Chapter 7. Tuesday night brought a storm. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the top floor. The office is dead quiet except for the tapping of my keyboard. It was past 9. Lincoln and I stayed late to finish a quarterly report. The stiff boss-employee dynamic had cracked over the last few days. You can't be serious. You've never seen a horror movie? I spun my chair around to face his open office door. Lincoln looked up from his laptop.
I don't see the appeal of watching people make stupid decisions and run into dark woods.
That's the whole point. The thrill, the suspense. What do you watch for fun? Stock market updates? He leaned back, those amber eyes tracking my movements.
I read and I observe.
Boring. I teased and walked past his door, heading for the archive room. We needed the physical contracts from 2 years ago to match the current numbers. The room smelled of old paper and dust. Tall, heavy steel filing cabinets lined the walls. I found the cabinet marked Miller Accounts and grabbed the handle of the top drawer. It stuck. I jiggled the handle and yanked harder. With a loud screech of metal, the drawer flew open. The sudden shift in weight threw the cabinet off balance. A horrible groaning sound filled the room. The giant steel structure tipped forward, casting a dark shadow over me. My feet glued themselves to the floor. The cabinet weighed hundreds of pounds. It was going to crush my ribs. I threw my arms up and squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the impact. A gust of hot wind rushed past me. A loud, violent slam shook the room. The floor vibrated beneath my shoes. I opened my eyes. Lincoln stood right in front of me, his back pressed against my chest, shielding me. His left arm was raised, his large hand flat against the center of the steel cabinet. He stopped the falling metal dead in its tracks. I stopped breathing. He held the crushing weight with one single hand. His arm didn't shake. His muscles didn't strain. He stood there like a stone pillar. With a low grunt, Lincoln pushed forward. The heavy steel cabinet slammed back against the wall, rattling the light fixtures. He shoved the drawer shut with a sharp click and turned around. His chest heaved. His eyes shone with a bright, terrifying gold color.
Are you hurt?
His voice came out rough, scratching like sandpaper. No. My brain scrambled to make sense of what just happened. A normal man couldn't catch a falling steel vault with one hand. It was impossible.
Good.
He stepped back. The gold faded from his eyes, returning to amber. He looked away, hiding his face in the shadows. I followed him out, my heart hammering. Adrenaline, I told myself. It was just a crazy rush of adrenaline. Mothers lift cars off their babies. People do crazy things in a panic. I forced the logic into my head until it stuck. There was no other explanation. He'd just moved fast. That was all. But my hands kept shaking long after I went back to typing. Chapter 8. The rains stopped by Wednesday morning, leaving the city slick and bright. I walked into Lincoln's office carrying a stack of mail. He stood by the window, holding a dark blue ceramic coffee mug. He turned to face me just as a sudden loud crack split the air. The handle of the mug snapped right off. The ceramic cup crashed to the floor, shattering into sharp shards. Hot black coffee splashed across the dark carpet and over Lincoln's shoes. "Don't move!" I dropped the mail on his desk and hurried to the corner for paper towels. Lincoln ignored me. He crouched down and reached for the biggest piece of broken ceramic. "Wait, those edges are sharp!" He grabbed the jagged shard. The sharp edge sliced right across his palm. A thick line of crimson blood welled up, dripping down his wrist. I gasped and rushed over, tearing off a wad of paper towels. "You cut yourself. Press this against it." I grabbed his hand. His skin felt like a burning fever. I pressed the paper towels hard against his palm to stop the bleeding. His hand twitched under mine.
Bite her. Mark her. Claim her right now. Take her on the floor.
Lincoln squeezed his eyes shut. His knuckles turned white. He locked his jaw, fighting a vicious internal battle to keep the fangs from dropping past his gums. He forced the beast down, locking it in an iron cage. He couldn't scare her. Not yet. He ripped his hand away from my grip.
I'm fine.
"You're bleeding. You need a bandage. Let me look at it."
Leave it. Just call maintenance for the spill.
He barked, his voice holding a dark, commanding edge that made me freeze. He turned his back to me and wrapped a fresh paper towel around his hand. I backed out of his office, confused and a little hurt by his harsh tone. An hour later, I printed the final marketing agenda and walked back into his office. He sat at his desk, signing a document. He didn't have a bandage on his hand. The paper towels were gone. My eyes darted to his palm. I stopped. I stared hard at the skin. His palm was smooth. There was no cut. There was no scab. There wasn't even a faint red line. "The cut, where did it go?"
It was just a scratch. It didn't break the skin.
"I saw blood. It dripped on the floor."
The coffee looked dark. Your eyes played a trick on you.
He said smoothly. He finally looked up, pinning me with an intense, unblinking stare. I swallowed hard. My human brain scrambled for an excuse. A shallow scratch. A trick of the light. The blood was just a smudge. I built a wall of logic to block out the impossible reality. Right, just a scratch. I retreated to my desk, trying to ignore the loud, screaming alarm bells in my head. Things weren't adding up, and the answers hiding in the dark terrified me. Chapter 9. The annual Croft Industries spring dinner took place in a rented downtown ballroom on Friday night. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over round tables draped in crisp white linen. Waiters in black vests carried trays of champagne through the crowd. I stood near the edge of the dance floor holding a glass of sparkling water. I wore a simple plum-colored sheath dress I found at a thrift store. It fit well and gave me a shred of confidence. That confidence wavered the second Todd from accounting spotted me.
"Tessa, look at you. Top floor material now. You've left us regular folks in the dust."
Todd abandoned his group of friends and made a direct line toward my corner. He stood far too close. I could smell the gin on his breath. I just moved desks, Todd.
Right. We've all wondered what extra duties you've taken on to get that glass desk. Rumors says you and the boss share a very close working relationship.
My face burned with a flash of heat. I gripped my water glass tight. The rumors mill needs a new hobby. Excuse me. I turned to walk away, but Todd sidestepped, blocking my path. He reached out and wrapped his hand around my bare elbow. A shadow fell over us. The temperature in the corner spiked, turning the ballroom air into a furnace. Lincoln Croft stood right behind Todd. He wore a tailored navy suit. His dark hair looked pristine, but his amber eyes burned with a chaotic, violent fire.
The beast saw another male touching its mate. It wanted blood. It wanted to rip Todd's throat out and paint the ballroom red.
Lincoln forced his hands into his pockets, clenching his fists so hard his knuckles ached. He kept the fangs hidden.
Remove your hand from my assistant.
His voice dropped to a low, unnatural octave that vibrated through the floorboards. Todd jumped. He dropped his hand from my arm and spun around, nearly spilling his gin.
Mr. Croft, I was just congratulating Tessa on the promotion.
Lincoln didn't look at Todd. He stepped forward, putting his broad shoulders right between Todd and me. He created a solid, impenetrable wall of dark navy wool.
Return to your table.
Todd swallowed hard, nodded fast, and scurried away. Lincoln turned to face me. His chest heaved with deep, dragging breaths. The scent of wild strawberry and toasted sugar washed over him, calming the feral rage in his mind.
Are you okay?
I'm fine, thank you. A chime echoed through the room. A voice over the speaker announced dinner. Lincoln offered me his arm. I hesitated for a fraction of a second before looping my arm through his. He felt like solid iron under the fabric of his suit. We walked to the head table. I sat in the chair to his right. Waiters rushed out, placing plates of roasted lamb and vegetables in front of us. I picked up my fork and took a bite. It tasted delicious. I glanced at Lincoln. He sat frozen. He stared down at the ornate silver cutlery resting beside his plate. His jaw ticked. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a silk handkerchief, and wrapped it around his fingers. Using the silk barrier, he pushed the silver fork and knife far away from his plate. Is something wrong with the silver?
I have an allergy, a severe metal sensitivity.
He waved a waiter over.
Bring me a stainless steel set, now.
Yes, sir.
I watched Lincoln. A metal allergy? I hadn't ever heard of an allergy that required a person to wrap their hands in silk just to move a fork. The puzzle pieces in my head rattled together. The fallen cabinet, the vanishing cut, the burning heat of his skin. He turned his head and caught me staring. The gold ring around his amber irises flared bright in the dim chandelier light. A low, rumbling noise vibrated from his chest. It didn't sound like a throat clear. It sounded like an animal. A deep, territorial growl. It washed over me, sending a shiver of primal heat down my spine. I squeezed my eyes shut, terrified of how much I liked the sound and even more terrified of what it meant. Chapter 10. The dinner ended a little past 11. The city streets outside the ballroom glittered with fresh rain. Lincoln offered his sleek black town car to take me home, but I declined. The air around him felt too heavy, too charged. I needed space to breathe. I needed space to force the logic back into my brain. I hailed a yellow taxi, gave the driver my address, and sank into the cracked leather back seat. I watched the city lights blur past the window. My mind kept replaying the events of the week, the tipped cabinet, the smooth skin on his palm, the way he pushed the silver fork away, the low growl that rattled my ribs. He's just an intense guy, I told myself. A billionaire with a weird metal allergy and a lot of gym time. Stop making up ghost stories. The taxi pulled up to my cramped third-floor walk-up. I paid the driver, stepped onto the wet sidewalk, and climbed the concrete stairs to my door. I reached into my small black clutch. My fingers met a tube of lipstick, a compact mirror, and my phone. No keys. I dug deeper. Panic flared in my chest. I dumped the contents onto the palm of my hand. the keys were gone. A clear image flashed in my mind. Right before I left for the party, I set my keyring on the edge of my glass desk next to my blue plastic tub. Stupid! From inside the apartment, a loud yowl echoed through the wood. Nacho. The orange menace needed his nighttime medication mixed into his wet food. If I left him alone until morning, he'd tear up the velvet cat bed Lincoln bought him out of pure spite. I couldn't leave him locked in there all night without his dinner. I had to go back. I walked 2 blocks to the subway station. The midnight train was almost empty. The rhythmic clatter of the tracks set my nerves on edge. The city at night always carries a different, darker energy. Shadows look longer. The silence feels heavier. I checked my phone clock. Midnight. The train stopped at the downtown station. I jogged the final block to the towering glass and steel building of Croft Industries. The lobby sat dark, except for the dim glow of the security desk. A lone guard sat behind the counter. I walked up and tapped the marble. "Tessa from the top floor, I forgot my keys."
Make it quick. The cleaning crew finished up an hour ago.
I swiped my badge and stepped into the silver car. I pressed the button for the top floor. The machinery hummed. The elevator dinged. The silver doors slid open. The top floor was pitch black. The only light came from the moon spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The air smelled of floor wax, rain, and something else. Something heavy and metallic. I pulled my phone out and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness. I walked toward my glass desk. I kept my footsteps light. I reached the desk and swept the beam across the glass surface. My keyring sat right next to the blue plastic tub, exactly where I left it. I snatched the keys. The metal jangled loud in the quiet room. I let out a breath. I just wanted to go home and feed Nacho. I turned to leave. A sudden noise froze the blood in my veins. It came from behind the heavy oak door of Lincoln's office. It started as a low, wet tearing sound, fabric ripping. Then came a loud, sickening crack of shifting bones, followed by a heavy, breathless panting. My heart hammered. Someone was in there. Someone was hurting him. My boss was being attacked in the dark. I didn't think. I dropped my hand, letting the light point at the floor. I crept toward the solid oak door. I reached out, grabbed the cold metal handle, and pushed the door open just a crack. I peered into the moonlit office. The scream died in my throat. I peered through the narrow crack. The moon flooded the office. There was no attacker. There was no burglar. There was only a monster. A giant, terrifying beast stood in the center of the dark gray carpet. It was a wolf, but it was far too large. Its shoulders stood as high as a man's chest. Thick, coarse fur covered its towering frame. Its paws were the size of dinner plates, tipped with long, curved claws that dug into the plush carpet. The beast stood still, its chest heaving with deep, rattling breaths. My eyes darted to the floor. Shreds of dark navy wool lay scattered, a torn white dress shirt, a shattered leather belt, the remains of the tailored suit Lincoln wore just 2 hours ago. My mind snapped. The wolf ate him. That's the only explanation my brain could form. A wild beast broke into the top floor. It cornered my boss. It ripped his clothes to shreds and devoured him in the dark. I clamped a hand over my mouth to smother a sob. My lungs burned for air, but I refused to take a breath. If I made a sound, the beast would hear me. If it heard me, I was dead. The giant wolf shifted its weight. A low, vibrating growl started deep in its chest.
"She's here. I smell her. Mate."
The beast turned its head toward the door. In the moonlight, I saw its eyes. No magical glow, no sparks. Just the eyes of a predator, wild, reflective, and a piercing, vivid amber. The wolf stared right at the crack in the door. It stared right at me. Its nostrils flared, pulling in the scent of wild strawberry and toasted sugar. The beast let out a sharp whine. It took one heavy step toward the door. The floorboards creaked beneath its colossal weight. Pure terror injected ice water into my veins. I stumbled backward. My heel caught the edge of the blue plastic tub on my desk. The plastic clattered to the floor with a loud, hollow bang. The wolf barked, a deafening, booming sound that shook the glass walls. I spun and ran. I didn't wait for the elevator. I hit the heavy metal door of the emergency stairwell and threw myself down the concrete steps. I heard the oak door smash open behind me. The scratching of giant claws tore into the carpet. I took the stairs 2 at a time. My plum dress tangled around my knees, but I ripped the fabric to free my legs. 16 flights. I flew down them in a blind panic. My phone slipped from my sweaty palm and bounced down the concrete steps, shattering. I left it. I just kept running. I hit the ground floor and threw my weight against the exit door. It burst open. The night guard jumped out of his chair.
Hey, what's going on?
"Run! Call the police! There's an animal upstairs!" I didn't stop to explain. I hit the revolving doors and fell out onto the wet sidewalk. The rain poured down, soaking my hair and my ruined dress. I ran 3 blocks without stopping. I reached the subway station and dove through the turnstile just as the midnight train doors started to close. I threw myself into the car. The doors shut with a hiss. I collapsed onto the hard plastic bench, shaking. The train pulled out, carrying me away from the nightmare. Lincoln was dead. The monster ate him. And I was next. Chapter 12. The subway ride felt like a blur of flashing lights and rattling metal. I sat huddled on the bench, shivering in my soaked plum dress. Every time the train hit a dark tunnel, I saw those giant amber eyes. Lincoln is dead. My brain repeated the phrase in a loop. The logic built an airtight case. He stayed late. A predator got inside. It ripped his suit and killed him. The train stopped at my station. I bolted out and burst onto my street. The rain hit my face in cold sheets. I ran to my building, fumbled with my keys, and unlocked the front door. I sprinted up the 3 flights. I shoved my key into my lock, turned it, and threw myself inside. I slammed the door shut. I threw the deadbolt. I locked the chain. My chest heaved. Water dripped onto the cheap rug. But locks weren't enough. A door couldn't stop a monster that size. I ran to the center of the room, grabbed the edge of my thrift store coffee table, and dragged it across the floor. The wooden legs scraped loud. I shoved it hard against the front door, wedging it under the handle. I grabbed the dining chair and stacked it on top. Meow! I spun around. Nacho sat in the kitchen doorway. His single eye stared with clear judgment. He didn't care about the barricade. He cared about his empty bowl. The sight of the cat broke the final string holding my composure together. I dropped to my knees on the wet floor, pulled Nacho into my arms, and burst into tears. "We're leaving, Nacho. We're packing up and leaving the city. We can't stay here." I stayed on the floor for 10 minutes. When the panic dialed down, survival instinct kicked in. I let go of the cat. I stood up and marched to my kitchen table. I flipped open my laptop. My hands shook as I opened my email. I needed to disappear before that beast found my scent again. I started a new message to Mr. Davis and the HR department. Typing. "I'm resigning from my position as Executive Liaison. Effective immediately. Don't contact me. A wild animal has breached the top floor. I believe Mr. Croft is dead. Call animal control. Call the police. Don't go to the top floor unarmed." I hit send. The email vanished into cyberspace. I closed the laptop. My whole body ached. I walked to my bedroom, stripped off the wet dress, and put on an oversized gray sweatshirt and thick sweatpants. I grabbed my largest duffel bag and threw it on the bed. I started packing fast. Jeans, shirts, socks. I walked back to the living room. Nacho sat inside the velvet cat bed Lincoln bought him. The sight of the luxurious gift sent a fresh wave of grief and terror through me. Lincoln was arrogant and bossy, but he didn't deserve to die in the dark. He bought my cat a heated bed. He stood up for me at the dinner. "Come on, Nacho, we're leaving." I walked to the kitchen and grabbed a plastic carrier. Nacho took one look and scrambled under the couch, hissing loud. "Nacho, please." I reached under the couch. He swatted my hand with sharp claws. I pulled back, wincing. I sat on the floor, leaning my back against the locked door. I pulled my knees to my chest. The adrenaline crashed. I couldn't force the cat out tonight. "Fine. We leave at first light." I rested my head against the wood of the door. The rain pounded against the window. I closed my eyes, praying the barricade would hold until the sun came up. I prayed the beast stayed in the glass tower. I had no idea the monster was already hunting for my scent. Chapter 13. Gray morning light crept through the horizontal gaps in my window blinds. I sat on the floor, my back pressed against the wood of my front door. My neck ached, stiff from a sleepless night huddled in my oversized sweatshirt and thick sweatpants. Outside, the city woke up. Car horns blared. A garbage truck groaned down the narrow street. Inside, the silence felt thick enough to choke on. I stared at the barricade. The thrift store coffee table and the dining chair sat wedged beneath the door handle. It looked pathetic in the daylight. A giant, bloodthirsty beast would splinter that cheap wood in 2 seconds. A sharp knock rattled the door against my spine. I jumped, scrambling backward across the cheap rug. My heart hammered against my ribs, wild and frantic. I held my breath, waiting for the wood to shatter.
Tessa.
The voice filtered through the door. It was deep, rough, and human. Lincoln. My mind spun in circles. I'd sent an email to HR saying he was dead. I'd seen the torn clothes. I'd seen the monster.
Tessa, open the door. I know you're in there. Your phone's sitting at the bottom of the emergency stairwell. You've got no way to call for help, and you're terrified. Let me explain.
You're dead! A wild animal ate you. A heavy sigh sounded from the hallway.
I'm standing right here. I'm unharmed. Open the door.
No, there's a monster in that building. I saw it. A raspy meow broke my concentration. Nacho crawled out from under the worn-out fabric couch. The orange cat stretched his front legs, shook his fur, and trotted straight toward the front door. He sniffed the bottom crack of the wood. The scent of the man who bought him the heated velvet bed drifted inside. Nacho let out a loud, demanding yowl and scratched at the floorboards, demanding to be let out to greet his benefactor. Traitor!
Even the cat knows I'm not a threat.
The lock clicked. He'd got a master key? No, my landlord probably gave out spares to anyone holding a wad of cash. The doorknob turned. The door pushed inward, hitting the dining chair. The wood groaned. Lincoln, stop! He didn't stop. A surge of raw, unnatural power shoved against the door. The dining chair tipped over, crashing to the floor. The coffee table screeched across the floorboards, the legs splintering under the immense pressure. The door swung wide open. Lincoln stepped into the cramped apartment. He wore a long black trench coat over dark jeans, his hairs ruffled by the wind. There wasn't a single scratch on his face. He looked exhausted, the skin under his amber eyes shadowed with dark circles. He stepped over the broken coffee table and closed the door behind him. Nacho immediately rubbed his orange cheek against Lincoln's heavy leather boot, purring like a broken engine. I stayed pressed against the couch, my knees pulled to my chest.
You saw the torn suit. You saw the wolf. Your brains jumped to the only logical conclusion a human can make. You thought a predator broke in and attacked me.
It was the size of a car.
It wasn't an intruder, Tessa. That beast didn't eat me. That beast is me.
I stared at him. The room felt like it was spinning off its axis. You're crazy.
Think about the file cabinet in the archive room. I caught hundreds of pounds of falling steel with one hand. Think about the broken ceramic mug. My palms sliced open and healed without a scar in less than an hour. I pushed the silver cutlery away at the dinner party because silver burns my skin.
My lungs forgot how to pull air. The pieces clicked together, forming an impossible picture.
Shifters are real. I'm a wolf, Tessa, and I'd never, ever hurt you. Chapter 14.
Words. Those are just words. You're trying to cover up a murder. You hired a wild animal handler. You're doing some illegal billionaire stunt. My human logic fought a desperate losing battle against the mounting evidence. Lincoln pinched the bridge of his nose. He looked around the cramped, messy living room, measuring the space.
You need proof. I understand. But if you run again, I'll have to chase you down the stairs, and the neighbors'll call the police.
Show me, I challenged, ignoring the tremor in my hands. Lincoln unbuttoned his black trench coat and tossed it onto the worn fabric couch. He reached for the hem of his dark t-shirt.
I shredded my favorite Navy suit last night because I lost control when you ran. I'm not ruining another shirt. I had to shift back into my shredded suit on Friday night and convince the police the night guard called that you just had a panic attack.
He muttered. His chest and arms were covered in thick, corded muscle, marked by a few faded silver-colored scars. He kicked off his boots.
Don't scream, it'll be loud.
He closed his eyes. He took a deep, dragging breath. The transformation didn't look like magic. It looked brutal. A sickening crack echoed through the small room as his spine elongated. I slammed my hands over my mouth, stifling a shriek. His bones shifted, popping and snapping out of their human sockets. Thick, coarse, dark fur erupted across his skin. His jaw pushed forward, stretching into a long, terrifying snout lined with razor-sharp teeth. In a matter of seconds, the billionaire vanished. The apex predator stood in his place. The giant wolf took up a quarter of my living room. His broad shoulders stood level with my chest. His colossal paws gripped the cheap rug, the long claws digging into the fibers. The sheer size of the beast stole all the oxygen from the room. My spine hit the wall. I couldn't move. I was trapped in a tiny box with a monster. The wolf didn't bare its teeth. It didn't growl. Instead, the giant beast lowered its front legs, folding them against the floor. He dropped his massive chest to the rug and laid his large, terrifying head flat against his paws. He made himself as small as possible, looking up at me with those piercing, vivid amber eyes. They were Lincoln's eyes. A loud, raspy meow broke the tension. Nacho hopped off the crushed velvet bed. The 10-pound orange cat walked right up to the giant, lethal predator. My heart stopped. I waited for the wolf to snap its jaws and swallow my pet whole. Nacho sniffed the wolf's giant nose. The cat let out a loud, rumbling purr and headbutted the wolf right between the eyes. The giant wolf let out a soft, huffing breath that ruffled the cat's orange fur. He nudged Nacho back, gentle and careful. A strange, sudden calm washed over me. The terror evaporated, replaced by pure awe. The beast wasn't a mindless killer. It was him. I lowered my hands from my mouth. I took a hesitant step forward. The wolf watched my every move, his amber eyes tracking my bare feet on the rug. I took another step, dropping to my knees right in front of his massive snout. I reached out a shaking hand. The wolf held perfectly still, not daring to flinch. My fingers brushed the thick, coarse fur on top of his head. It felt warm, radiating an intense, furnace-like heat. I dragged my hand down the side of his neck, feeling the heavy, powerful muscles beneath the coat. A deep, vibrating rumble started in the wolf's chest. It was the same sound he made at the dinner party, a sound of pure contentment. Lincoln! The giant wolf closed his eyes, leaning his heavy head into my palm. The monster was real, but the monster was mine. Chapter 15. By Monday morning, I sat behind my glass desk on the top floor. I'd decided to return to work. Lincoln promised me total safety, intercepted my frantic resignation email from the HR servers before anyone saw it. And after sitting on my living room floor petting a giant wolf for an hour, the corporate world didn't seem so scary anymore. He bought me a new phone to replace the shattered one in the stairwell, and we agreed to maintain a professional boundary during office hours. That boundary shattered at 10 o'clock sharp. The private elevator doors chimed and slid open. 2 women stepped onto the plush, dark gray carpet. The air in the reception area immediately turned icy. The older woman possessed a regal, terrifying posture. She wore a tailored white pantsuit, her silver hair pinned up in a flawless twist. The younger woman walking beside her looked like she stepped off the cover of a high-fashion magazine. She wore a sleek emerald silk dress, her wrists glittering with heavy diamond bracelets. They smelled of expensive perfume and old money. They didn't look at me. They glided right past my desk, acting as if I were a piece of invisible furniture, and walked straight toward Lincoln's heavy oak door. "Excuse me, do you have an appointment?" The older woman paused. She turned her head, giving me a slow, sweeping look from my scuffed flats to my plain beige skirt. A condescending smile touched her lips.
We don't need appointments, human.
The word human dripped with disgust. She pushed the oak door open and walked in, the younger woman following close behind. I grabbed my notepad and hurried after them, slipping through the door before it shut. Lincoln stood up from his black desk, his jaw clenched tight. The amber in his eyes flared bright, signaling his rising temper.
Mother, Beatrice, what are you doing here?
We're securing the future of this pack. Genevieve Harlow's agreed to the pairing. Her family controls the Silver Pine territory. By mating with her, you bridge our borders and double our hunting grounds. The elders have signed the contract this morning.
It's a perfect match, Lincoln. Our bloodlines are flawless.
A low, dangerous growl rumbled in Lincoln's chest. He stepped out from behind his desk.
I'm the alpha. I decide who I mate with. The elders don't dictate my life. I reject this contract.
You're acting like a petulant child. You need the Silver Pine borders to secure the northern trade routes. If you reject Genevieve, her father will cut off our supply lines. You'll weaken the entire pack for what? Your pride?
Beatrice turned her sharp gaze toward me, standing near the door.
Or is it for this? Word spreads fast, Lincoln. The elders know you keep a fragile, useless human on your top floor. They smell her on your coats. You can't make a human your Luna. She'd snap in half during a border dispute.
The insult hit my chest like a block of ice. I gripped my notepad, my knuckles turning white.
Don't speak to her,
Lincoln ordered, stepping between his mother and me. The heat rolling off his body scorched the air.
I'll speak the truth. A wolf needs a wolf. A billionaire needs an equal. You're a temporary amusement girl. Know your place, before my son loses his empire playing pretend with a commoner.
The silence in the office rang in my ears. I stood near the oak door, my grip on the notepad slipping. I stared past Lincoln's broad shoulders and looked at Genevieve Harlow. She stood tall, draped in emerald silk. She looked fearless, powerful, and built for a world of shadows and fangs. She belonged in a glass tower. She belonged beside a man who could stop a falling steel vault with one hand. I looked down at my beige skirt. I bought it on clearance 3 years ago. A frayed thread hung near the hem. A stark, undeniable realization crashed over me. Beatrice was right. I'm a junior marketing assistant who budgets for subway fare. I hid behind a barricade of cheap furniture when I got scared. Lincoln is an apex predator, an alpha who controls a corporate empire and a secret society of wolves. I'm a fragile, ordinary human. I don't belong here. The gap between our worlds is a bottomless canyon.
Tessa, don't listen to her. This means nothing,
Lincoln said, turning his head. His amber eyes searched my face, panic flashing in his gaze.
It means everything, Lincoln. You've got a duty to your kind. You can't drag a human into a pack war. She wouldn't survive the first week.
Survival instinct, honed by years of scraping by on my own, flared bright in my chest. If I stayed, I'd always be the weak link. I'd always be the target for wealthy snobs like Beatrice and rival wolves looking to hurt the alpha. I set my notepad down on the nearest leather chair.
Tessa.
Lincoln warned, taking a step toward me. No, she is right. I'm out of my depth. I whispered, holding up a hand to stop him. The block of ice in my stomach spread to my veins, numbing the pain. I turned around and walked out of the office. I left the heavy oak door open behind me. I marched straight to my glass desk. I pulled a small cardboard box from the bottom drawer. I worked fast, my hands moving on autopilot. I packed my fake succulent plant. I grabbed my favorite pens. I opened the middle drawer and pulled out my worn leather notebook. Heavy footsteps thudded against the dark gray carpet. Lincoln stormed out of his office, ignoring his mother and Genevieve.
What are you doing?
He demanded, his voice thick with a suppressed growl. I'm packing, I said, tossing the notebook into the box. Lincoln reached across the glass desk and gripped my wrist. His skin burned hot against mine.
Stop. You're not leaving. I reject the contract. I don't care about the Silver Pine borders.
I pulled my wrist free. I looked up into his face. The desperation in his eyes broke my heart, but I forced my expression to stay blank. You should care. You're their leader. They need those borders. You've got a duty to your people, Lincoln. I have a duty to myself. I can't survive in a world where your family looks at me like a disease. I can't fight rival wolves. I'm just a human. I reached up and unclipped the plastic security badge from my collar. I dropped it onto the pristine glass desk. The plastic clattered loud in the quiet room. I quit. I picked up my cardboard box and walked toward the private elevator. I hit the call button. The silver doors slid open with a soft chime.
Tessa!
Lincoln roared, his inner beast surging to the surface, flashing his eyes brilliant gold. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the lobby button. I didn't say goodbye. I watched his towering, furious form stand frozen in the reception area as the silver doors slid shut, cutting me off from the top floor, the billionaire, and the beast forever. Chapter 17. The silver doors slid shut with a soft chime. I stared at the closed metal panels of the private elevator. The scent of wild strawberry and toasted sugar lingered in the cold air, fading fast. My mate's gone. She took her cardboard box, her worn leather notebook, and walked out. Inside my chest, the feral beast slammed against the iron bars of its mental cage.
Mate left. Chase her. Catch her. Bring her back.
I forced my boots to stay planted on the dark gray carpet. I spun around to face my office. My mother, Beatrice, stood near the heavy oak door. She wore her crisp white pantsuit, her posture rigid and victorious. Not a single silver hair sat out of place. Beside her, Genevieve Harlow smoothed the fabric of her emerald silk dress, her heavy diamond bracelets catching the lights.
Good riddance. The human has basic survival instincts. She knows she can't run with apex predators. Now come back inside. We've got to finalize the Silver Pine border agreement before noon.
I marched toward them. The heat in my blood spiked to a dangerous, burning fever pitch. I didn't bother locking the inner wolf away. I let the beast rise, letting the primal rage flood my veins. My vision tinted red, and the reflection in the glass walls showed my eyes flashing from amber to a brilliant, glowing gold. Genevieve took a step back, her predatory smile faltering. Even she recognized a lethal threat when she saw one.
The Silver Pine deal is dead. The borders are closed. There won't be a mating contract.
Don't be a fool, Lincoln. You need those trade routes. Her father will control the entire Northern Territory. You'll surrender an empire over a girl in a cheap beige skirt?
I've built this empire. I secure the trade routes. I command the pack. You don't issue orders on my top floor.
You're acting on base instinct. A wolf needs a true Luna. Genevieve offers a flawless bloodline. What does that fragile girl offer? She ran away the second a true wolf stepped into the room.
She ran because you threatened her. You insulted my mate in my own territory. You brought a stranger into my sanctuary and paraded her around like a prize horse. You think you've secured the pack's future? You just painted a target on your own backs.
You'll regret this, Lincoln. My father will cut off the supply lines. Your pack will suffer.
I turned my glowing gold eyes onto Genevieve.
Let your father try. Tell him the Ridge Creek pack stands independent. If a single Silver Pine wolf steps 1 inch across my borders, I'll tear him apart myself. Now get out of my building.
Beatrice's face turned pale. She realized I wasn't playing a corporate game. This was a territorial banishment.
You're throwing away your legacy.
My legacy walks on 2 legs and smells like strawberries. Leave your security badges on the desk. If either of you ever approaches Tessa, I'll forget we share blood.
They didn't argue further. The sheer force of the Alpha Command left them no room to breathe. Beatrice turned on her heel and marched toward the guest elevators, Genevieve trailing close behind. I didn't wait for them to leave. I strode to my glass desk. Tessa's plastic security badge sat abandoned. I snatched it up, gripping the plastic tight in my fist.
Find her. She's hurting. Find her now.
I hit the button for my private elevator. I rode down to the underground garage. My driver stood beside the sleek black town car, ready to open the door.
Give me the keys.
The driver tossed them over. I climbed into the driver's seat, fired up the engine, and tore out of the garage. I didn't drive toward her cramped apartment right away. The wolf knew better. I messed up. I let my family insult her. I needed a peace offering. I drove straight to the seafood market down by the harbor. I walked in wearing my tailored charcoal suit, ignoring the strange looks from the fishermen. I slapped a $100 bill on the wet counter and demanded the freshest, thickest cut of raw tuna steak they had. They wrapped the pink meat in butcher paper. I grabbed the package and ran back to the car. I peeled away from the curb, breaking 3 traffic laws to get to her street. My hands gripped the steering wheel, the leather groaning under my strength. I threw away an elite alliance today. I severed vital trade routes. I banished my own mother. None of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was the woman in the scuffed flats. I'd have to convince her to let the monster back in. Chapter 18. The subway ride home felt like a long, suffocating nightmare. I sat in the corner of the crowded train car, clutching my cardboard box to my chest. The fake, succulent plant poked my chin. My worn leather notebook rested against my heart. I stared at the dirty floor, fighting a desperate battle to keep the tears from spilling over my cheeks. Beatrice's cruel words echoed in a relentless, mocking loop inside my head. Thought. A temporary amusement. A fragile, useless human. She spoke the truth, and the truth felt like a boulder crushing my ribs. I didn't possess a flawless bloodline. I didn't own diamond bracelets or emerald silk dresses. I wore a plain beige skirt with a frayed thread hanging near my knee. I bought my groceries on discount. I belonged in the gray cubicles on the 15th floor, not in a world of giant wolves and billionaire empires. The train screeched to a halt at my station. I stood up, adjusting my grip on the box, and joined the herd of tired commuters walking out into the afternoon gloom. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs to my cramped walk-up. I set the box down, dug my keys out, and unlocked the front door. The door stuck halfway open. The wooden frame remained stressed and warped from Saturday morning when Lincoln shoved his way inside. I pushed hard, squeezing through the gap. My apartment looked exactly the same, yet it felt different. The splintered remains of the thrift store coffee table sat pushed against the far wall. The broken dining chair lay in pieces near the kitchen, a heavy reminder of the raw power pacing around inside the man I left behind. Nacho sat curled in the center of the living room. The grumpy orange cat relaxed inside his circular velvet bed, the built-in heating pad keeping him warm. "Hey, Nacho," my voice is cracking. The cat opened his single eye, let out a raspy meow, and went back to sleep. I carried my box to the kitchen counter. I pulled out the fake succulent and set it next to the sink. I pulled out my favorite pens. I stared at the mismatched plastic containers sitting in the dish rack, leftover casualties from my previous meals. A heavy, echoing knock rattled the stressed wood of my front door. I jumped, spinning around. My heart performed a frantic gymnastics routine. Nobody ever knocked on my door in the middle of a Monday afternoon.
Tessa.
A deep, rough voice called out. "Lincoln." I froze. I stared at the door. He actually followed me. "Go away," I resigned. "You need to go back to your office and sign your trade agreements."
Open the door, Tessa. The bossy CEO tone's missing. I'm exhausted, almost desperate. I can't fix the door frame from out here without breaking it more. Let me in.
I walked over, my scuffed flats making no sound on the cheap rug. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Lincoln stood in the dim hallway. He looked like a wreck. He'd ditched his suit jacket and his silk tie. The top 3 buttons of his white shirt hung open, revealing a glimpse of the faded silver scars on his chest. His dark hair looked wild, as if he'd spent the entire drive running his hands through it. He held a package wrapped in white butcher paper. "What's that?"
A premium tuna steak. I went to the harbor. It's for Nacho.
"You brought my cat raw fish?"
I need an ally, and he likes me. May I come in?
I let out a shaky breath and stepped back. Lincoln squeezed his broad shoulders through the damaged frame. Nacho immediately hopped out of his velvet bed, smelling the fish. The orange cat trotted over and rubbed his cheek against Lincoln's tailored suit pants. Lincoln walked to the kitchen, unwrapped the paper, and dropped the thick cut of pink tuna into Nacho's ceramic bowl. The cat dug in with feral enthusiasm. Lincoln turned to face me. He leaned his hips against the kitchen counter, crossing his arms. He looked too big for my tiny kitchen.
I rejected the contract. I told Genevieve to leave. I've banned my mother from the top floor. The Silver Pine Alliance is dead.
Why would you do that? They control the northern trade routes. Your mother have said you need 'em for the pack.
My mother cares about power. My wolf cares about you. I don't want an emerald dress. I don't want a flawless bloodline. I want the girl in the beige skirt who trapped me with jalapeno peppers.
I'm just a human, Lincoln. I hide behind cheap furniture when I get scared. I'll drag you down.
You're the bravest person I know. You caught a billionaire stealing your lunch, and you fought back. You faced a giant beast in your living room, and you reached out to pet him. My inner wolf refuses to function without you, Tessa. I've thrown the perfect world away, because my world means nothing if you're not sitting outside my door. Chapter 19.
His words hung in the quiet space between us. They felt heavier than the splintered wood of the furniture leaning against the walls. I looked up into his face. The cold, bossy CEO mask wasn't there anymore. The scary alpha look had vanished. He stood in my small, cramped kitchen. His dark hair was a wild mess. His white shirt was full of wrinkles. He'd thrown away his whole world, his status, and his peace just for me. He risked a war with other wolves just to stand on my cheap rug. The boulder that had been crushing my chest for days just shattered. It turned to dust. The fear that made me want to run was gone. Every doubt about being just a human burned up. In its place, a fierce spark took hold. It was a feeling I couldn't deny. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I knew I wasn't going anywhere. You brought my cat a fancy tuna steak, but you brought me nothing? A slow smirk spread across Lincoln's face. It was the kind of look that made my heart do a flip. The gold ring around his amber eyes flared bright. It caught the afternoon light that poked through my window blinds. He took a step toward me. He took up all the space in the room.
I brought you me, the boss and the beast. Both belong to you.
I didn't wait another second. I reached out and grabbed the front of his white dress shirt. I pulled him down to my level. Lincoln let out a sharp groan. His large hands hit my waist and gripped me tight. He crashed his mouth against mine. The kiss hit like a bolt of lightning. It was hungry and desperate. It was full of a need that had been building since that first day in the breakroom. I tasted the raw power that lived just under his skin. The heat of his body wrapped around me like a shield. It felt like nothing in the world could touch me as long as he was there.
Mate, ours finally.
Lincoln backed me up until my spine hit the kitchen counter. He lifted me off the floor with ease. He set me on the edge of the laminate surface. I wrapped my arms tight around his neck to anchor him to me.
Mine.
He growled the word against my lips. I felt his fangs graze my skin. It wasn't a business deal or a contract. It was a vow, a primal, unbreakable promise between two souls. Yours. I breathed the word back. I traced the line of his strong jaw with my fingers. He kissed my neck, trailing hot, open-mouthed kisses down to my collarbone. He breathed in deep, filling his lungs with my scent. The giant beast inside him seemed to settle. It found a state of pure peace. He'd found his mate. He'd secured his home. We need a new coffee table and a new chair. You break a lot of things, Mr. Croft. Lincoln chuckled. The sound was rich and dark. It rattled through his chest and into my bones. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. His amber gaze was full of love and a lingering fire.
I'll buy you 100 tables. I'll buy you a new house, a whole building, whatever you want.
I don't want a new house. I just want you to stop stealing my lunch.
No promises.
He smirked and stole another quick, breathless kiss. A loud clatter cut us off. We both turned our heads. Nacho sat on the linoleum floor. He'd finished every bit of that pink tuna. Now he was kicking his ceramic bowl against the cabinet. He wanted dessert. Lincoln sighed. He dropped his forehead onto my shoulder.
The king wants more tribute.
I laughed. The sound was bright and clear. The fear of his mother and the rich wolves felt 1,000,000 miles away. I was human, yes, but I had a giant wolf guarding my kitchen and a one-eyed cat ruling my living room. I didn't need a silk dress to feel powerful. I hopped down from the counter and smoothed my skirt. I walked to the sink, sidestepping the cat's bowl. I washed the fish smell off my hands. You can stay, but if you're going to be my mate, you have to help me fix that door frame. My landlord is trash.
I'll just buy the whole building.
Start with a hammer. It's in the box under the sink. He smiled. It was a real blinding look that made my stomach flip. The billionaire grabbed a hammer. He was ready to work for the girl he chose over the whole world. Chapter 20. 3 weeks went by. The top floor of Croft Industries had a whole new set of rules. I stood in the private break room. I was humming a quiet tune. The room smelled of coffee and fresh rain. I set my new bowl on the marble counter. It was made of sleek glass with a snapping lid. I ditched the old plastic tubs. Executive liaisons need an upgrade. I chopped a tomato. I mixed it with grilled chicken and rice. Then I pulled out my secret weapon from my bag, a single bright green jalapeño pepper. I sliced it into thick rings. I left every seed in. I didn't remove the white ribs. I wanted the fire. I scraped the peppers into the bowl and covered them with cheese. The heavy oak door pushed open. Lincoln strolled in. He wore a sharp, dark suit. His tie was knotted tight. He looked like the ruthless billionaire the world feared. But I knew better. The pack elders had finally backed off. They realized Lincoln would burn the whole company down before he'd leave me. Beatrice stayed away. Genevieve found a different pack to bother. Peace had finally come to our territory. Lincoln stopped right behind me. He wrapped his strong arms around my waist. He pulled my back against his chest. He buried his face in my neck. He breathed me in deep. A familiar, rumbling purr came from his ribs.
Luna. Safe. Ours.
Good morning.
It's noon. You've been typing since 8. You need a break, and you need to feed me.
I turned around in his arms. I held the glass bowl up between us. You're a wealthy man, Lincoln. You own 5-star places. You could eat truffles every day for the rest of your life.
Truffles are boring.
He looked at the glass bowl. Inside his head, the wolf was wagging its tail. It recognized the smell of the raw peppers. It wanted the fire. I popped the lid and handed him a fork. Lincoln didn't hesitate. He dug the fork into the center. He scooped up a huge bite of chicken, cheese, and seeds. He put it in his mouth and took the bite. I crossed my arms. I leaned against the marble counter and watched him. He chewed. His jaw moved in a steady, slow rhythm. He swallowed the food. He didn't cough. His face didn't turn red. A single bead of sweat didn't dare to form on his forehead. The man had a stomach made of cast iron. He set the bowl down on the counter. One corner of his mouth tipped up into that arrogant, perfect smirk. The gold in his eyes flared bright under the lights. Well, how's the spice level today, Mr. Croft? Lincoln took a step forward. He trapped me against the counter. He reached out and put his hands on my hips. The heat from his body made my skin prickle. He leaned down. His face was just an inch from mine.
Not hot enough.
I left all the seeds in.
I know, but I'm hotter.
I groaned. I rolled my eyes toward the ceiling. You used that line on day 1. You're losing your touch. The big boss is out of fresh talk.
If it works, I'm not changing it.
He closed the gap and kissed me. The taste of the pepper was hot on my lips, but his kiss was sweeter than toasted sugar. I tangled my fingers in his dark hair and pulled him closer. I let the solid weight of him ground me. The private elevator chimed in the distance. The afternoon mail was here. I pulled back, out of breath. I pressed a hand to his chest. I felt his heart beating under those silver scars. Go back to work. I have a mountain of reports to finish. You have an empire to run.
Fine, but I'm coming over tonight. Nacho wants a salmon fillet.
Don't spoil my cat.
I spoil what's mine.
He watched me leave. I walked back to my desk with a smile on my face. I sat down and opened my notebook. I took a bite of my own lunch. The jalapeño burned my tongue. It brought tears to my eyes. But I didn't mind the sting. It was the perfect trap, and it caught the best monster in the world. The end. Quick favor, don't go anywhere yet. If you thought Tessa was brave for feeding 6 raw jalapeños to her billionaire alpha boss, wait until you meet the heroine in this next story on your screen. You've got to hear this disaster unfold. Click the video on your screen right now. It's bonkers.